Hi, I'm Mark Leewright. Today I'm going to talk to you about a few of my favorite books written by my favorite writer, Stephen King. Stephen King has written 63 novels, with every single one spending time on the New York Times bestsellers list. Some believe that King is a horror writer. On the surface, this is technically true, but once you read a few of his books, you come to realize that his writing is about so much more. He writes about trauma, grief, loss, love, friendship, growing up, the inherent power memory holds, and overcoming great odds. King has often said that he enjoys writing in the horror genre because he loves putting everyday people up against things that are anything but normal or everyday. He also has this effortless way of painting pictures with words to the point that you can see quite easily where the particular story takes place. I suppose he developed this skill because the towns where his stories take place are quite important to the stories themselves. I am confident in saying that he is easily the most prolific American writer alive today. My first favorite I'm going to talk about today is It. Everyone has heard of Pennywise the Dancing Clown, who is, among King fans, one of the most beloved villains Stephen King has ever devised. But not everyone has read the book Pennywise comes from. It is not an easy read, clocking in at over 1,100 pages long. On the surface, its plot is fairly straightforward. An otherworldly creature taking on the form of a Victorian/Elizabethan clown preying on the children of Derry, Maine, and one ragtag group of children who call themselves the Losers Club battle with it as children and as adults. But once you begin reading it, you realize that it is about far more. It's about the loss of innocence, the inherent power of fear and grief, the strength of friendship, and the fragility of memory. Within King's novels, there is what he calls a multiverse that links many of his books together. In this multiverse, there are interdimensional beings that can travel between worlds. Pennywise is one of those creatures. Among fans, Pennywise is described as a glamour, which is a shape-shifting monster. He takes the form of whatever may scare each specific child the most. Pennywise gets as much nourishment from the fear that he invokes as he gets from the children he preys upon themselves. He's also believed to be millions of years old, and there's even a scene in the book where Pennywise is observed crash landing on a then prehistoric Derry landscape. One insight that came to me about the book was that the size and weight of the book, especially if you carry it around with you in your day-to-day comings and goings, reflects the weight of the emotional scars and trauma that each member of the Losers Club carries within them. It is also what I call the granddaddy of them all, because this novel has connections to several of King's other works. I will circle back to this a few times. The second novel I'm going to be talking about is The Tommyknockers. The Tommyknockers is one of King's lesser-known novels, and it is probably my all-time favorite. It's bleak and cynical and self-loathing and ultimately self-redeeming. It's about a woman named Roberta Bobby Anderson discovering a gargantuan flying saucer buried deep under the tract of land that she owns, and the ensuing chaos that's unleashed upon the town of Haven as more and more of the saucer is dug up. It's also simultaneously about Bobby's dear friend Jim Gardner, his alcoholism and its profoundly negative effect on his life, and his personal struggle to juggle that with that ticking time bomb with being there for Bobby. Jim Gardner is symbolic of Stephen King's struggle with alcoholism. Old Guard, at one very low point early in the book, has resolved to kill himself, but a voice within him urges him to hold on because Bobby needs him. This is a big theme in the book with Jim, the desire and need to be useful to someone who needs your help, whether they're willing to ask for it or not, and whether they even know that they need the help. Jim is self-destructive, but he, no doubt, has deep love and friendship for Bobby. Be it an inner voice or a supernatural one, it continuously urges him to get a hold of himself so that he can be there to try and help Bobby. Circling back to the granddaddy of them all, there is a massive reference to Pennywise late in the Tommyknockers. At one point, a group of people who are being affected by the flying saucer's influence travel to Derry, Maine to buy batteries for their newly devised alien technology the saucer has inspired them to invent. Those who are changing because of exposure to the craft get violently ill when they get farther and farther away from the craft. While in Derry, a Havenite on the battery run gets very sick on the trip and muses to himself that he must be hallucinating because he could swear that he saw a clown with shiny silver dollars for eyes in the sewer drain, which matches exactly the description of Pennywise from It. Third favorite I'm going to talk about is Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher has an amazing backstory. In 1999, Stephen King was on one of his famous around town walks that he would take very often in the town where he lives. On this walk, King was hit by a car and was severely injured. Dreamcatcher was the book he wrote while he was convalescing, and what's more impressive is that he wrote it in its entirety by hand in longhand. He had to write it this way because, due to his injuries, it was just too excruciating to physically sit at his desk and type on his typewriter. The book is about a group of lifelong friends who grew up in Derry, Maine. Yes, that Derry, Maine. Before the book takes place, one of the group has healed up after being hit by a car while walking home from his job as a professor at a college. King does this often, working his own life experiences into his novels. Due to his injury, they had to postpone their annual trip to the hunting cabin at the beginning of the book. And at the beginning of the book, they've already arrived at the cabin, and while there, an alien invasion begins. The book is cynical and at times hopeless, but it's fantastic. The book takes place in a tract of land called the Jefferson Tract. At the beginning, a huge blizzard has begun to fall on the tract. Two of the group members had left the cabin to travel to the nearby general store for supplies. The other two of the group stayed at the cabin, and while there, they witnessed a massive migration of forest animals: deer, elk, bears, rabbits, raccoons, all of them running for their lives, all in one general direction. Naturally, this freaks out the two at the cabin. The two that had gone to the general store end up losing control of their car after swerving out of the way and just barely missing a woman sitting cross-legged in the middle of the road. She was one of the first victims of the invading aliens. Next, Granddaddy of them all connection. During the invasion, one of the group ends up back in Derry. So in Derry, there was what is called a standpipe, which is a form of water tower that looks basically like a tall, cylindrical tower with a conical roof. During the climax of it, the standpipe tips over and rolls down a hill and destroys a few houses in a nearby neighborhood. The town of Derry has erected a memorial to the victims of the destruction caused by the standpipe, and the memorial is placed where the standpipe once stood. The group member walks over to the standpipe memorial, and spray painted in red across the memorial plaque are the words, "Pennywise lives." Next favorite I'm going to write about is The Shining. I think it's safe to say that everyone alive has heard of at least the movie version of The Shining. The book version is a masterpiece and the first King novel that I actually read. It suffices to say that The Shining hooked me forever. The Shining is about the Torrance family: Jack, the father, Wendy, his wife, and Danny, their son. Jack was a teacher at a prestigious prep school, but ends up getting fired for his behavior due to his alcoholism. He then is given a tip by a friend about a lavish but remote Colorado hotel needing a caretaker for the off-season. He ultimately accepts the job and brings his family along with him to live in the hotel for the winter. Jack is all too pleased to have nothing but time to work on a new play. Upon arriving, the Overlook Hotel chef, Dick Halloran, notices Danny Torrance and his shine. Halloran finagles his way into getting some time with Danny, as Halloran too has the shine. Dick Halloran sort of educates Danny about the nature of shining, how so few people actually have it, and even fewer still have any inkling that they even have the ability. The shining is a form of telepathy, giving those who have it the power of telepathic communication, the ability to see things that happened in the past, and even seeing ghosts. The Overlook Hotel has a history of violence, and this violence has seeped into the very foundations of the hotel. Those who shine can see this violence and whatever entity has taken hold of the Overlook. The hotel eventually begins to torment the family, and ultimately Jack succumbs to its influence and tries to murder his family. Granddaddy of them all connection. In the novel It, years before the events take place, there is a bar for the African American community in Derry because there were small-minded racists in Derry who didn't want them drinking with them. The bar is called the Black Spot, and a racist group sets the place on fire one night. The people inside panic, and they basically cram themselves into the front doorway, pinning themselves in and preventing anyone from exiting. The bartender/cook of the Black Spot is none other than Dick Halloran from The Shining. Dick helps the grandfather of one of the members of the Losers Club escape out of the inferno. King fans believe that Dick used the shine to foresee the exits getting jammed up, and thus saving as many people as he could manage to. Well, I hope that you enjoyed my video about my favorite Stephen King novels, and I hope that it's made you curious about them, and I hope that it makes you want to go read some of his works. Thanks for watching.